The wind of Red Bluff carried laughter that night, but it wasn't the kind born from joy. It was the sharp, ugly kind that came from cruelty and whiskey. Inside the dim saloon, under the crackle of an oil lamp, a group of men had gathered around a woman whose wrists were bound with rope. Her hair was wild from the ride, her face streaked with dust, and yet her eyes, those eyes held the kind of fire that could silence a whole room. If men still had the decency to feel shame, she was Apache, captured days before by a scouting party and brought back like a trophy. They joked, they jeered, they called her savage and thief, though she had taken nothing from them except their peace. One man slapped the counter and shouted, "Give her to Maddox! The lonely bastard needs company." The saloon broke into cruel laughter as Cole Maddox looked up from his corner table. He was a man carved from quiet, broad-shouldered, eyes like cold iron, the sort of man who didn't ask for much and got even less from life. Ever since the war, he'd kept to himself, tending a ranch miles from town where even the wind seemed to whisper his name with sorrow. Without a word, he stood, the wooden floor creaking under his boots, and walked toward the woman. She didn't flinch. Her chin stayed high, proud despite the mockery around her. One of the men shoved the rope into Cole's hand, laughing. "There, Maddox. A woman for your trouble. An Apache wife." But Maddox only stared at them, his jaw tightening. Then he turned away, leading the woman out into the dark, the laughter fading behind them like the echo of sin. The ride to his ranch was long and wordless. The desert stretched wide beneath the moon, a sea of silver sand and shadow. Coyotes cried from distant hills, and the air smelled of rain that would never fall. Maddox didn't look back once, and the woman didn't ask where he was taking her. When they reached the ranch, the sky had begun to pale, a thin ribbon of dawn stretching over the horizon. He stopped his horse near the barn, dismounted, and cut the rope from her wrists. "There," he said quietly. "You're free now." She rubbed her hands, her expression unreadable. He motioned toward the house. "Water's inside. Food too, if you want it." Then he walked away, disappearing into the barn, leaving her standing alone under the weak morning light. She could have left then, taken one of the horses and vanished into the canyons where her people once roamed, but something in his voice, something heavy and lonely, rooted her there. Days passed in silence. She stayed, though neither spoke much. Maddox fixed fences, mended saddles, worked the land from dawn till dusk, and she helped quietly, efficiently, without being asked. She gathered wood before nightfall, gleaned the tools, even fed his horse when he forgot. There was no trust between them. Not yet, but there was understanding, the kind that grows between two souls who've both known loss. Sometimes at dusk, Maddox would find her standing on the ridge, looking westward, where the land swallowed the sun in red fire. He'd see a glimmer in her eyes then, a sorrow so deep it made his chest ache. He wanted to ask her name, but something stopped him. Maybe it was fear. Fear that if she told him, she'd have to leave. One evening, a storm rolled in from the mountains, thick and wild. Rain lashed against the cabin walls, lightning tearing the sky into pieces. Maddox sat by the fire, mending an old rifle, when the door creaked open. She stood there, soaked to the bone, hair clinging to her face, eyes fierce as the lightning behind her. "We're alone," she said softly, stepping inside. "It's time to do what must be done." Maddox froze, the words slicing through him like a blade. He rose slowly, unsure what she meant, vengeance, escape, or something else. She came closer, her voice trembling but strong. "They took everything from me. My land, my people, my name. I thought I'd never trust another soul again. But you didn't touch me, didn't laugh, didn't sell me back to pain. You gave me silence, and in silence, I remembered who I was." Her hand brushed the table, trembling with emotion. "My name is Tyre," she whispered, "and I will not run anymore." For the first time, Maddox saw her not as a captive, not as a stranger, but as a mirror of his own broken soul. He took a step closer, the firelight dancing between them. "You don't owe me anything," he said, voice low. She shook her head. "I owe you truth." The storm outside raged like the world was ending, but inside that cabin time stood still. When the thunder finally softened, she sat by the fire, and Maddox poured 2 cups of coffee. One for her, one for him. They didn't speak again that night. Yet something had shifted, the kind of quiet change that only hearts understand. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the earth damp and sweet with new life. Maddox stepped outside, staring at the horizon. The sun painted the valley gold, and for the first time in years, he felt something like peace breathing through the air. But peace doesn't last long in the West. In town, the men who'd given him that gift were whispering again. They'd heard the Apache woman still lived at his ranch, and their twisted pride couldn't stand it. "He's gone soft," one sneered. "Let's remind him where she belongs." That night, they saddled their horses, their laughter carried by the wind like a dark promise. Maddox didn't know it yet, but the life he'd begun to build, the fragile bond born of silence and storm, was about to be tested by the same cruelty that once brought her to him. As the sun set behind the ridges, he caught sight of Tyre standing on the porch, her hair glowing in the dying light, and he realized he'd fight heaven and hell to protect her.